And also you find the X-Men, Patrick, Ian, Hugh, Hallie, and all them in a very different place than they were left at the end of X-Men 3 or Wolverine.
Hey, do you guys have some questions for
Yes.
Bryan Singer?
Over here.
All right, spit it out.
Hi there. Thank you very much for coming. I just had a question about dealing with actors and any sort of particular ways about them. I suppose, for example, if you had to work with Joaquin Phoenix, who's a vegan, and all of his skins in Gladiator were fake, and all of his leather when he played Johnny Cash in Walk the Line, all the leather he played as Johnny Cash in Walk the Line was fake, and Joaquin Phoenix vegan, blah blah blah. And he narrated the movie Earthlings, which is pretty intense. So if you have an actor like that, and you're like, okay, how do I approach this person who's so set on something? Do you tell them, listen, that's nice, but this is how it's going to be, or do you have to cooperate with them? Or?
God, I'm friends with Joaquin, so that's weird to hear all that stuff. That was not really easy. You just be like, yeah, dude, let's make a movie. No, the first thing I do is I listen to the actor, and when they have these ideas, Brian Cox on X-Men 2 came in and said, I'm doing a Southern accent. I'm like, can you do a Southern accent? It better be a good one then. Benicio del Toro said, he started doing that. And I was like, oh, okay. And I quickly had to go through my mind, does the audience need to understand anything this guy has to say? No, they don't. Okay, it's fine. It's true, it's true. I had 1 minute to make that decision, by the way. Because I thought it was a joke. I thought, he got drunk with Pete Postlethwaite and Chris McCoy that night. They thought, I'm going to walk on set. Watch Bryan, freak out. But no, so what I do is I first listen to the actor, because clearly they've given it thought. They've managed their character. And with great actors like Joaquin Phoenix, you want to let them bring themselves to the table. It's like when I get hired, I'm a particularly great director, but when I get hired to make a film, I'm asking them to let me make my film because I'm the guy they hired. So if I've hired Brian Cox, or Kevin Spacey, or Benicio del Toro, any of these actors, because I trust them, the first thing I do is I listen. And I try to let them do what they want to do. And I hope it's congruous with the movie. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And when it isn't, you just have to guide them, caring. You have to just listen. You have to show that you actually listen. And if they say, this is how I'm doing it, then you gotta adapt quickly, I imagine. I've never had that happen before. I've never had an actor as an ultimatum say, this is what I'm doing, in a big way. Like, where Marlon Brando wore a bucket on his head and said, this is with no pants. Okay. I asked Russell Crowe, before I ever met Hugh Jackman, I asked Russell Crowe to play Wolverine, and he said, I'll do him bald. I was like, it's Wolverine. He's got so maybe, but so that.
Thank you very much for coming to Montreal with this huge production, by the way.
Thank you. Where are you? So I can see.
Right here. I'm very curious, what sort of things go into a decision to come to Montreal as opposed to Toronto or Vancouver, which are even larger in terms of productions? And on the flip side, what is it that Montreal has as an advantage versus those other two cities? And what is it that we could do better to bring more large productions here?
Great bars. So much fun. No, yes, but also, well, there are tax incentives, which they don't, foolishly in California, they're not offered, and there are good tax incentives. In the case, I can only answer specifically to this film. There was stage space. White House Dan was leaving, so I could take over. I could get the best crew available here. There's a great facility at Mel's. It's an amazing facility because everything's right, all in one space. So there's the economic incentive. There's the location. I love shooting here particularly because the set is. The stages are so close to the city, where when I was shooting in Berlin and in London, it was a trek. It was an hour drive each way. And, that takes a toll on you and the cast and everyone and crew. and again, for this film, for Days of Future Past, since it takes place all over the world, when I'm shooting out in the street, there's terrific locations here that can double for Paris or Russia or things like that. So it was really, right for this movie. But I personally, I have to live in a place for a year of my life, and I sort of now in my career have the ability to make those choices. And I really wanted to live here. I prepped a movie called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind here that I ultimately did not make, but I prepped it here. And but my cinematographer went on to shoot with George Clooney directing, but when I prepped it here, I really loved it. The 2 months I spent here, and I thought, and I had just shot Jack the Giant Slayer in London, and I loved living in London. So when they told me we're not going to go to London, London's too full, it's too packed with movies. I was like, uh-oh. And then they said Montreal. And I went, oh, cool. And it's been cool. It's been great. So, that's the reason.
I guess another thing is in order. And my question has more to do with Xavier's and Magneto's relationship later on in this movie. You see them in X-Men 1 and X-Men 2. They have a very unique relationship, as in they stand for the same cause, but they take different sides to it, and yet they still consider each other very, very close friends. You see them become close friends in X-Men First Class, but how are you going to really get into this relationship with the newer movie?
Well, I just repeat sort of what I said before. In this movie, you're going to see where in X-Men First Class, it was how they met. This is how they became or become true. Well, I can't give it away because something happens in it with regard to their lovely relationship. But it's just you'll see. It's more about them as characters and solidifying or getting to who they need to become than it is so much about their relationship. Although their relationship is part of the film. That's all I can tell you without telling you the scene I'm shooting Tuesday. I mean tomorrow, especially Thursday. I'm freaking out about it.
Hello, Mr. Singer.
Hello.
First of all, thank you for coming to Montreal. Thank you for this opportunity. My question has to do with your course of going to that career. You went to film school, you went to the more conventional route, while someone like Quentin Tarantino, he never went to film school and he still made it big. What do you think, are the pros and cons of following each way of getting into filmmaking, basically?
For me, the greatest part about film school for me was I saw a lot of great movies that I may not have seen on my own, where Quentin worked in a video store, I think, so he was, educating himself with movies. And I met some collaborators. The most important one is John Ottman, who's my editor and my composer. And he's not necessarily worked on every single thing I've done, but he's worked on most of it. And that was a great relationship that began at USC Film School. So, when I went to School of Visual Arts, the first 2 years of my career, my academic life, I lived in New York City, and I was learning more about the art film scene and things like that. So I felt I got well-rounded exposure that way. And as a kid living in suburbia, that was the best way for me to do it. But I had the opportunity. With Quentin, he's just absorbed himself into film on his own, and then did what you got to do, and that's just make films. It's really more about making films than when you go to film school or don't. It's making films is the most important thing. It's 80% of it. I wish. I can justify bringing Patrick Stewart back because his consciousness was in that woman, I think, in the hospital at the end of X3, and theoretically, if these people can walk through walls and teleport and do all this shit, they could probably build a body around their consciousness. But the other ones, it was tough. And it bummed me out, because I've done 3 movies with Jimmy, and he's a friend, and I wasn't happy with that choice. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff. I love the casting of Ellen Page, and I'm so thrilled that she's in this movie. But that was not something I was particularly thrilled with.